Alright, what's up everybody? So today I'm going to cover how much can you make selling indie comics at comic conventions. And to give you sort of a brief backstory, so like with no effort at all, about 2 weekends ago, I sold 40 comic books at my local mid-sized Comic Con, MightyCon. Um, and I had no banners, no postcards, no stickers, no business cards, not even my own graphic novel. I had nothing. All I had was my box of free copies from my publishers for my 2 comic series, It Eats What Feeds It and Liquid Kill. And I had a small rack displaying some other titles from Scout Comics that luckily another creator, Brenton Lingle, let me borrow just so I had something to display. Thank you, by the way, Brent. Um, and just with little to no effort, I sold a good portion of my box, and so imagine what I could have done with a little bit of prep work and things like that. So today, that's what I'm going to go over. Is like, what can you typically make at a comic convention as an indie creator? And this is from the perspective of an independent comic creator who doesn't necessarily have a publishing company, just somebody that like sets up your booth in like an artist or alley or writer's block or whatever, or even exhibiting, just displaying your books and how much can you make doing the bare minimum. And I'm just going to give you a little bit of math, and then also stick around because I'll also explain some little tips and tricks on how to, on like what I learned on how to sell more at a booth and what I learned from some of the top sellers at my local con. So let's just jump in. So I think the best way to calculate how much you can make is to determine the approximate amount of people at the event, and then determine what percentage of those people you can get a sale from. Okay, and then determine what your average sale will be. So what your average sale will be is what we call a minimum viable product, or like the primary product that you're selling. In the case of myself, a writer, my average sale will be a graphic novel. Or in the case whenever I didn't have my full books, it would be a comic book, so like a floppy. And you determine that price. So a floppy, let's just say it's $5 or $10, and then your graphic novel, let's just say it's $25. So I'll start with the more fun, bigger numbers. Like let's pretend we're gonna like try to predict what we're gonna sell at San Diego Comic-Con, and let's just say that your primary product is your $25 graphic novel. Okay, so San Diego Comic-Con has an average attendance of, I want to say in reality it's like 150,000 people. But for the sake of simple numbers, we're going to say it's 100,000. Okay, for simple math. So let's just say you can sell your book to 1% of the attendees at San Diego. Okay, you can then expect to make 25 grand selling 1,000 books, which means you'd sell one full graphic novel to every 100 people that walk by your booth. That's not that outrageous of an amount. I mean, it is high, and I'll explain why later, but that's a good way of, like, in general, kind of starting, like, how to calculate what you can sell. Now, in reality, you probably can't sell to 1% of everyone in attendance, like I was saying, and I'll cover like more accurate percentages or how to figure it out in a minute. But let's just back up, and now let's go to a smaller convention like my local con. Okay, so MightyCon has a lot less people. So let's just say over the course of 2 days, there's probably like 1,000 to 2,000 people that showed up per day. And then if we average it out over the whole weekend, let's just say it was, and I was only there for 1 day, by the way, but let's just say I was there for 2 days and 3,000 people showed up. The full attendance amount was 3,000 people. So once again, selling my book at $25. Let's just say I could sell to 1%, which should be about 30 books. Then I can expect to make about $750. That, once again, that seems like a pretty realistic number to pull off, which I did. So it's like using that 1% amount. Can I do the same thing at bigger cons? Maybe, but I'll go over why and why not here in a second. So, judging by my observations, all right, this isn't like something, I didn't pull data out of anywhere. This is just by what I have seen and what I think many other people I talk to can sort of attest to, is that when you're at a comic convention, except for the certain ones that are very much specified specifically for independent comics. Like there are some cons that are just focused on comic books. There are some cons that are just focused on horror. There are some cons that are just focused on, you know, certain specific genres and things like that. But in general, your typical like fan expos, mighty cons, comic cons, the people that show up to these and what most of the conventions are, those people are there for the cosplay. They're there for Funko Pops. They're there for other collectibles, plushies, wall art, anime related stuff, and other pop culture items and toys and things like that. And I would say that in reality, probably 10% or less are actually interested in comics. And then of those that are interested in comic books, there's probably like 1 to 5% that are actually interested in your books or like independent comic books. So let's just say 5% are interested in indie comics. So then that means, they're not all interested in every genre or every kind of style. So now you're looking at maybe 1 in 5 people interested in indie comics might be interested in your book. And then you're looking at like people that are interested in yours, how many of them actually like have the money to spend on you, okay? So that's where I kind of come down to like, well, let's just say it's about 1%, okay? But at a small Comic-Con, like where mine was, you can probably get the full 1% of people that are interested in your indie comics because there's not much of a competition. There's, maybe less than 10 indie creators where I was at. And in reality, there might have been even less than that. Like true independent comic book authors, I want to say there was maybe 4. Okay? That's not much competition. So if anybody that was interested in indie comics, I pretty much got their sale. That's a lot different than bigger conventions like San Diego, where there's an entire subsection of the convention just dedicated to small press publishers and an entire subsection just for writer's blocks, just authors. Now you have hundreds of people that you're competing against with that big audience. So now you're looking at a percentage of 1% that you're going to try to grab, And so now it's like instead of just getting 1% of the whole attendance, now you're trying to at least get like 10% of people that are interested in indie comics, which even that is like only 1% of the whole people that are all there. In reality, at bigger cons, there are more people interested in independent comic books, which is why you can, like, if you have a high quality product, like, you're gonna beat out the people with lesser quality products. And that's why you'll see the same kind of pyramid math working out at these places to where the same few creators take all the business because they've just got the best thing, and that's what people are wanting, or they've got the most flashy, kind of hooky, high concept kind of very recognizable characters kind of comic stuff. And so that's what you have to strive to try to be in order to compete with the others. But once again, my whole point of this is like you can sort of then like do the math by that. Because you can sort of be like, let's see if I can at least get, my goal is to get 0.5% of the attendees at this convention, or 1% of the attendees. And 1% is like a good kind of just like average, especially at small and mid-sized conventions, because there's just sort of a general rule of sales that like if you just think of like going door to door, usually out of 100 doors that you knock on, you're going to get at least one sort of pity sale, or someone that's just kind of like, oh, it's $20 and you made all this effort, you're walking around, I'll give you something. It's the same at like conventions where it's like you can maybe at least expect a sale out of like every 1 in 100 people if you're actively trying to like talk to people and things like that. You can usually get at least one, who at least like is just like, I like your hustle or whatever, even if they're not that into it. So even with like bare minimum effort, you can usually get at least 1 out of 100 people. At bigger conventions where 100 people are walking by your booth every, minute or a few minutes, it's a tougher sell. But in general, that's what I was saying. So then you might want to scale it down to like, 0.1% kind of thing. But anyway, so how you can actually sell more, I'll give you kind of the rundown, is that you'll really want something that stands out in order to break the mold, okay? And you'll want to have something, you'll want to display that very quickly, almost like the genre of your series, and be able to quickly explain it as soon as someone looks at it. But I sort of have like four key things that I learned, very practical, specific things to do if you're going to be tabling at a convention of what to do in order to make sales. Because these were four things that I didn't have, and I lost sales because of it. So the first one, as I said before, is you need to have a full trade paperback, or at least a full set of your series. Almost everyone who comes to an indie comic booth is interested in a full story. Very few people were interested in just one comic book. Even if it was like a rare or had an awesome cover that people like mentioned or looked at, they didn't actually buy it, because most of the attendees at the cons that are interested in indie comics are readers and not collectors. The collectors are at different booths. They're trying to collect classics and stuff from Marvel and DC. They're not necessarily there to collect your stuff. So, like I was saying, have a full series and make sure you bring every issue and a full set, as many full sets of your series, and sell your full set as a deal. Which brings me to my next point. You'll want to have like a common deal or a discount promotion available. Like as soon as people walk up, for example, what I did that sold quite a few was I had like a flat $10 rate for each individual comic book. However, if people bought four, they could get four of them for $20, which averages $5 for comic book, which to them will seem like it's 50% off. Even though in reality it's basically like I'm making my percentage, I'm making my little margin, but it's still a margin, okay? Now this only works in my case where like if you could print comics or get them for free from your publisher or for a very low cost, because they might print a whole lot and they'll set a certain amount aside for you. Like this is something you'll want to plan in advance if you have a publisher. And they say, do you want any for yourself? Say yes. And be like, yeah, because you'll get them a low cost because they're going to add them to a larger print run. As opposed to later down the line, and they have to do another printing, and it's going to be a lot smaller. The cost per issue goes way up. Okay? So try to get them up front when the printing cost is low. But anyway, so that you can have higher margins. So like if the printing costs are like you get them for a lot lower or half of retail, which half of retail, $4 or $5 in comic shops, and then you sell them at cons for 10, 20, that you can make a lot more. Point being, like, in my case, like, what I was doing is, like, my first series is 3 books, so I could be like, you can get the full set of my first series plus the first issue of my next series, all for $20, and that was how I sold almost everything. Like everybody's like, oh yeah, I'll do that. Full set plus the front one, and my like Liquid Kill has, something like 9 or 10 different kinds of unique variant covers that people could choose from, and that worked really well. And like I said, I didn't have enough full sets I sold out of that deal almost immediately because I only had like 5 full sets of at each of feeds it. If I would have had 30, I probably would have sold all of them. Anyway, number 3, have a credit card reader. So I didn't, because like this was basically my first con where I was exhibiting alone, solo, and I didn't even like think of it. And so I was only doing cash sales. Luckily there was like a ATM there, but I lost a lot of sales from people that were like, they had cash, but they only had 50s or 100s, and I didn't really have change for that. Or they didn't have cash at all and didn't want to go to the ATM. But if I would have just had like a Square reader, I could, even though they take like a fee, like 1 or 2%, 2% loss or whatever, or taken out of your margin is a lot better than not getting any sales at all. So if you're actually serious about it, I would say like get a credit card reader. I don't know how much they cost, but they can't be that much to where it's not worth it. Number 4 is get yourself some free promotional stuff and some banners. So I'd say I probably spoke to about 5% of the people that attended the convention, and of that, 5%, probably 1 in 5 people bought something. even whenever I was out of the stuff that they wanted. Um, most people wanted full graphic novels, and so I couldn't sell any of those because I didn't have any, or they wanted full sets. And like I said, I sold out of those like really fast, like in the morning. But just saying, like every single person that walked by, if they didn't, even if they didn't buy anything or want to, they always asked if they could have a card or like where my social media links and stuff was. And if I would have just had any of that, like, sending people to my website, I could have gotten people onto my email list. I could have gotten people to follow me on social media. I could have hyped my YouTube show. There was all kinds of things I could have done. Eventually, I was so like at a loss that I like went to the person next to me and they had blank pieces of paper, and I started just like tearing it up by hand and just writing my website on there, and giving those away because like everybody wanted at least something. So imagine as if I would have had like a postcard with sort of like almost like a pitch or just like some good artwork, and then like my website and the logos to my comic series and stuff like that just on it, so people, because everybody wants something, they put it in their bag with their prints and stuff, and then they pull that out and then they got your thing, and now they could have had like a scanner code to where people could scan it and go directly to my website and things like that. And there's so much that I could have done and didn't have any of that. And so that's something to take into mind. But all in all, like, just point being, like, I was flabbergasted at how well many of the other vendors performed. So, like, I talked to other vendors, like, even authors, that were saying that they average 1 to 2 conventions per month, and they average a take-home pay of, like, 1 to 3 grand. Now, that's, like, revenue, so that doesn't include, like, how much they spent to print or whatever, but that's still a lot, Like, I thought that, that was, like, maybe your average at big conventions, not your typical kind of small and mid-sized ones. And, like, but apparently that is not an outrageous thing to, like, that's the average, and that there's people that make 10, 20 grand or more at the big conventions. So all of a sudden, like, the numbers make sense for someone that's full-time, all what they do is a full-time writer. Like, this is where you can make like a good portion of your annual income or even monthly income is through these conventions, and actually profiting, even if it's just a few $100s. If you can do 12 a year, that's a good chunk of change. But anyway, so hopefully that was helpful, and I plan to interview some more people who regularly do like a convention circuit, and hopefully I can get more insight from them. And if there's someone that does do this for a living and that has more or needs to correct me on anything, let me know in the comments. And if there's somebody that that's like specific you want me to interview on this subject, I'll put that in the comments. Once again, that's really all I got on this. So thanks, everybody. See ya.